In part 14, we saw that the Shiuli army was about to defeat. At that moment, a cold, calm voice sounded out in the cold northern winds. It was not loud, but it was clearly heard by everyone. All troops, assemble.
It's clear to see from up here.
Thereafter, a miraculous sight happened. As the drops rubbed their eyes in disbelief, the shadows of the Shiuli troops behind the wall of the corpses started to rise again, one by one. Their clothes were torn and tattered. Their expressions were pale. They were messy in their organization, and their swords has been dented. They dragged their bodies along and walked to the front slowly, assuming their original positions. They stood shoulder to shoulder. 1, 2, 3, 10, 100, 1000.
To see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell.
The scenes earlier on at dawn seemed to replay again. The blood-stained warriors stood up again and stumbled to assemble their formations, while looking like they could collapse any time. However, when they stood together, their posture became upright. They were like a forest made of stone. The defense line once again appeared more fortified than ever. He Xiao stood in front, wielding his sword as thousands of voices echoed out in unison. For freedom! Their shouts rumbled like thunder as everyone was shocked. There was no need for further orders or the beating of war drums. The troops stopped subconsciously in their tracks as a notion of despair started to creep up their hearts. They would never win this battle.
It's clear to see from up here. It's so beautiful.
It was not known where this notion originated from, as it slowly spread across the entire army through the looks in the soldiers' eyes. As they looked at their forlorn enemies standing in front of them, the Wei army started to feel fearful, developing a sense of respect for them in the process. Yuan Yang stood at the forefront of the army with a solemn expression. As he looked towards the blood-stained young lady who was still standing ever so upright, he felt a sense of respect surge up his head. Finally, he jumped off his horse's back and removed his helmet. Facing his army of 100,000, the 5,000 soldiers of Shiuli army, dead and alive, the countless citizens of the Yanbei, and the numerous pairs of eyes inside Longyin Pass, he proceeds to bow deeply. The Wei troops followed his action, bowing towards the army which they had once despised so greatly, following which they repeated their enemies' war cry for freedom. Thereafter, the Wei army started to retreat as the landscape turned desolate. As the autumn winds swept across the blood-stained grass plain. It was as if what had just happened was just a dream.
I got time, it's clear to see.
The warriors stood at their positions. None of them collapsed for fear that the wheat drops would turn back and kill them. Chu Xiao dragged her sword along and advanced forward as she stood upright. Her footsteps were heavy. Her expression was pale, as fresh blood belonging to unknown people stained her green cloak. The soldiers stared at her in disbelief as they tried to absorb the fact that the Wei army had just retreated. She stood there as the wind messed up the hair in front of the forehead and brushed across her eyebrows and face. Her voice had turned hoarse as tears welled up in her eyes. Like Yuan Yang, she bowed towards her army and uttered word by word, "Warriors, we have won." A fragmented sobbing sound echoed out from the behind, slowly increasing in volume. Those sounds were from the civilians, which they had so valiantly protected earlier on, as they ran towards the soldiers. The Xiuli army, led by He Xiao, saluted and bowed towards her as they chanted, "General, it's been hard on you. It's been hard on all of you." The sky was overcast. Chu Xiao stood up as two rows of tears streamed down quietly from her eyes. The Xia army ceased their attack but did not make way to let them leave. The merciless siege had truly begun. At this moment, Yuan Yang fully understood the accuracy of the intel that he had received. Chu Xiao had truly fallen out with Yan Shan and wished to leave Yanbei. The gates of Longyin would no longer open for them, and apart from heading to the Tang Empire through the waterway of the southern borders, which Yanshan had already sealed up, they could only pass through the Xia defense line. With increasing certainty, he was sure about her escape. Thank you for staying with me. Subscribe and like the video to support me. Thank you.